Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining my presentation today on Dialogism and Applied Linguistics Research Articles, Engagement Resources and Introduction Sections by Professional Scholars. I am Atheer Hunjur, a PhD student at King Saud University and a faculty member at Jubail Industrial College, both of which are in Saudi Arabia. The outline of my presentation goes as follows. We have the introduction, research gap, theoretical framework. We'll touch upon these very quickly, and then we will dig deeper into the methodology, results, discussion, and conclusion. Now, authorial voice, its interaction with other voices have been studied extensively in the literature, and to the point that there has been a number of frameworks to analyze discourse. The most influential of these is the appraisal framework by Martin and White. Now, the appraisal framework provides us with the tools for analyzing interaction, for analyzing academic research articles, authorial voice, stance, interaction with the audience. It's extremely influential in that regard. The appraisal framework have been used in multiple disciplines and have been used to analyze particular sections of research articles. For example, some have focused on the literature review of research articles, others have focused on discussion sections. However, very few studies have focused on the introduction section, despite its importance. And even these studies that focused on the introduction, they analyzed it using either the attitude or the graduation of the framework. Only one study that I was able to find during conducting this research that used the engagement system in analyzing introductions of applied linguistics research articles, which is the one by Zhu and Nisi in 2019. Another reason for focusing on applied linguistics in this article is because I think linguists are more aware of their selected locutions, of their selected linguistic choices, because they are specialized in the field of linguistics. They understand the effect these locutions or linguistic choices have on the reader. And therefore, I think it is extremely important to study the language used by linguists in their research articles. The research question is therefore, what is the frequency of the different engagement resources employed in the introduction section of applied linguistics research articles published in high-impact journals? The theoretical framework that we are applying or that we are using in the study is the appraisal framework, which is based under the interpersonal meta function of systemic functional linguistics, and it consists of three subsystems that are attitude, graduation, and engagement. The engagement model refers to the mechanism by which authors and speakers express their stance in relation to other voices and sometimes to their own voice. The engagement system is extremely important in analyzing research articles or academic papers, because the interaction in academic papers happen at two levels. The first level is the internal level, which is the author's voice. The second level is the external level, which is other voices, including the audience's voice. Therefore, the engagement model is the most suitable for analyzing this interaction or discourse in academic papers. The engagement subsystems or the engagement model consists of two main subsystems that are monoglossic resources and heteroglossic resources. In the monoglossic subsystem, prepositions or opinions are presented as facts or as taken for granted. However, in the heteroglossic resources, authors acknowledge the presence of other voices. They bring forward other voices, but they do so by either supporting them, rejecting them, or being neutral and just presenting them in the discussion. The monoglossic resources in this study were not analyzed in details, so utterance or clauses were identified as being monoglossic, and that is it. Although monoglossic resources can be bare assertions or presuppositions, however, in this study we did not annotate for the different resources of the monoglossic subsystem. Heteroglossic resources are more detailed than monoglossic resources. We have two main subsystems, which are contract and expand. In contract, the dialogue is closed down, so other voices are presented, but there is no room for discussion. In expand, the space for dialogic interaction is widened, or it's opened up. Contract resources can either be disclaim, proclaim. Expand can either be entertain and acknowledge. Now, I will not talk about each resource in here. I'll just talk about the addition of justify in this model. Now, justify has been there before the most influential book by Martin and White in 2005, the language of evaluation. However, it was neglected afterwards, although it is extremely important in my opinion. I think it is important because there is this sense of dialogic interaction between the author and the reader, because authors usually present their proposition, and they might anticipate that the reader could question or reject this proposition, and therefore the author provides evidence or provides justification for his proposition. And to me, I think this is a very good example of dialogic interaction, and it is actually dialogic in nature. This is actually supported by White in 2003 in his paper. He used justify as a subsystem of the engagement, and in more recent papers in 2020 and 2021, also Fryer 2019 used justify in his paper, and Martin 2008 discussed the possibility of justify and its use. Another thing that you may notice in here is the addition of bolster as a subsystem. Now, in a personal communication in 2023 between White and I, he suggested that these two resources, endorse and justify, could be grouped under one subsystem that is named bolster, because both of these resources strengthen a preposition. So they have the strengthening component in common between them, which makes them members of one group, which is bolster or bolstering. Therefore, this is what I'm using in my article in here. Now, I have to mention the importance of context and co-text in analyzing engagement resources, because they're not only dependent on grammatical form. Context and co-textual factors vary the meaning or change the meaning. So the annotation process could be highly subjective, according to Foley 2018, which means that authors or researchers need to review their annotation multiple times in order to achieve a point or the highest objective annotation possible. My methodology, now the corpus consists of 16 articles, all of which are from high impact journals, or 6 high impact journals in the field of applied linguistics. The impact factor of these selected journals ranges between 3.063 to 5.24. They were published in the past 3 years, 2021, 2022, and 2023. The word count of these of the introductions of these articles ranges between 432 and 758. The total word count of the corpus is 8,859. Now, in regard to the annotation, it was done manually because it provides a comprehensive and detailed analysis, and because, as we said, the engagement resources are very context dependent. Therefore, researchers need to not only manually annotate, they need to review their annotation multiple times to reach the most objective annotation possible, as mentioned earlier. Now, Foley 2018 recommended that the annotation process should carefully apply 7 or follow 7 steps. The first is defining the scope, which is the research question of our article or our study. Select and configure an annotation tool. In this study, we use the UAM corpus analysis tool, which has proven to be very effective, but we have done the annotation manually. We have drafted a context-specific annotation manual. The first stage of this was to review previous research, their appendices, and the example they have used, and draft a manual or a model for our annotation. So a group of locutions and the subsystem they belong to. Then we have analyzed around 4 articles of our corpus, edited the manual or the module that we have at hand, and then we continued with the rest of the articles and edited the manual or the module that we have at hand. So this process of model annotate has been very recommended in the literature. One recommendation was done by Foley 2018, and I can say that it has proven to be very effective in my study, because after every revision the model is edited as well, until I have reached the point where there were no more edits to the model. After that, I have re-annotated or revised my annotation like 2 weeks after the final revision of the model. That, in my opinion, have increased the reliability and validity of the analysis, and I really recommend following these 7 steps as carefully as possible in any research that deals with the engagement or other research or other subsystems of the engagement model, to avoid the subjectivity of the annotation process. And in regard to analyzing the results, of course, using the UIM corpus analysis tool, frequency was counted for each instance of a resource in the data, and it provided us with all the counts and all the details needed. In regard to the results, as we can see in here, there were more heteroglossic resources than monoglossic resources in our corpus. So 79% are heteroglossic and only 21% are monoglossic, which is in line with previous research across different disciplines and across different sections of a research article. And this actually provides an evidence that in academic writing there is a dependence on the exchange of voices, views, and previous knowledge, which is especially important in soft fields or soft disciplines where there is a lack of concrete evidence. And to replace that lack, or to make up for that lack, authors put more effort into building a convincing case for their arguments, and they seek support from alternative voices or from a community of voices. Now, a deeper look into heteroglossic resources, contract and expand. We have more expansive resources than contract resources in our data. The difference is not big, but there remains a difference. So 57% for expand and 42% for contract. In here we can have a look at the different resources used and how they were, or the percentage of each of these resources. Entertain the highest, followed by pronounce, acknowledge, justify, encounter at close proximity, deny, endorse, distance, affirm, and concede. They're very close as well in percentage. Now, as we can see in here, expansive resources are not many, but they were used more than contract resources in our data. So finding one, more expand than contract, which means that applied linguistics authors are more cautious when dealing with alternative views. So instead of closing down the dialogue, they tend to welcome the possibility of other views, which is supported by Highland 2011 and is in line with other fields as well, or other studies in the field of applied linguistics and studies in other fields as well, which again suggests that researchers or the language used in academic research tends to welcome the possibility of other voices. It doesn't close down the dialogue. Now, proclaimers and disclaimers. As we can see in here, there are more proclaimers than disclaimers. So proclaimers are in green, disclaimers are in orange. But in disclaimers, we can see that counter or concession is used more than deny. So there is a difference between them. However, for the other categories of proclaimers, there is a difference, although not a big difference. So 10.50% and 12.90 endorses the least proclaimer used in our data. Not the least though. There is affirm and concede, which are members of Concur or the subsystems of Concur. Now, more details into proclaimers and disclaimers. So disclaimers constitute like 34% of the contract resources in our data. Proclaimers are 65% of contract resources in our data. So there is a huge difference between the two. This difference is also evidenced in Friars, Yahya and Yusuf and Abdi and others, and Louis and others. So it is in line with previous research. However, other studies also have concluded the opposite. For example, Zuannisi and Rahman, they have found that disclaimer resources were employed more than proclaimer resources. However, we can say that this is because they did not include justify in their analysis. In our data, as you can see in here, justify is like 10% of the data, which means that it may have shifted the balance towards not here, sorry. Justify, yeah, in here. Justify is like 24% of the contract resources used, which means that this percentage has shifted the balance towards proclaimers. So yeah, this is the only difference between their studies and my study, which could be the reason for the difference in results. Now, overall findings, as we can see in here, entertain is the highest used resource, and there is no comparison between the use of entertain and other resources, which could tell us that authors tend to be careful and cautious when presenting their propositions. They tend to use hedging instead of bare assertions, or instead of explicitly endorsing others or affirming or conceding. Now, pronounce, acknowledge, justify, and counter, and here we can get a sense of the author's acknowledgement of other voices, not only using the acknowledged resources but also with pronounce as well. The use of justify could prove that they tend to justify their propositions if they think the reader is at odds with their proposition. Also, counter could highlight the opposing view, but also providing the author's view, so they're not neglecting other voices in their propositions. However, deny, endorse, distance, affirm, and concede, they are used the least. As we said, affirm and concede, yeah, we're gonna talk about these now in a minute. So this is just a glance at how the findings are presented in here. So we're gonna start with counter and deny. So we can see we have more counter than deny in our data. So instead of directly negating a proposition, they tend to welcome or provide the counter argument or a concession, which is unlike hard sciences, in which scholars have more confidence in shared assumptions than in soft disciplines, and they may use negation more. Now, another finding is concur is the least. So as we can see in here, affirm and concede are the least used, which might mean that authors avoid overt assumptions on the views of their readers. They tend to strengthen their propositions by providing a justification or using other voices or explicitly stating their own opinion or view. This is in line with other studies as well. Now, pronounce, as we can see from the data in here, is the second most used resource. So entertain the highest and then pronounce, which means that they tend to overtly state their voice using pronouncement resources, which is in line with other studies, except for the studies conducted in medical field or medicine, which could be the reason for the difference or the discrepancy between in the findings between the studies done on applied linguistics or sub-disciplines, and the ones done in medicine papers. Now, justify and endorse. According to our corpus, authors tend to justify their propositions rather than presenting other views as undeniable. So they prefer to provide the justification instead of just seeking support from other views and presenting them as undeniable. Now, comparison is difficult in here because, as I said before, no studies that I was able to find that incorporates the use of justify into the engagement model and analyzing applied linguistics articles or fields in general. So, but I have Highland in 2011, he suggested that authors in soft discipline focus on claim-making negotiations to make their propositions stronger, which could be used as a support to our finding in here that justify resources are used more in the articles we have analyzed in applied linguistics, which is a soft discipline as well. Now, again, as we can see in here, contract is used less than expand, so we have higher percentage of expand resources. So expansive resources, as we said, open up the dialogic space for alternative voices by using hedging and other entertain resources. And authors in applied linguistics do not only entertain other views, they also acknowledge the presence of other views, but they avoid criticizing them overtly, which really goes in line with the view that academic research engage with readers and strengthen their voice, mostly by referring to other studies. But they avoid explicitly stating criticizing other voices, which is the use of distance in here. So they are very cautious by using entertain resources such as hedging or acknowledging the author or the viewpoint or by whom it was mentioned before. And this is in line with previous research as well. So if we look in here, we have entertain, as we said, the highest. So hedging, other models as well, acknowledging here among the highest, and then distance the least, so they avoid criticizing others. Implications. Our study provides evidence and support for previous research in the literature. It adds new evidence, deeper analysis because of the use of the overlooked subsystem of justify, and it helps novice authors and postgraduate students understand the techniques used by scholars in other fields to engage readers, strengthen their voices. The limitations. Now, the study could have been enhanced by a number of elements. For example, the inclusion of a larger corpus, spending more time on the annotation and longer breaks between revisions, including an inter-rater reliability checks or stability measures. However, due to time constraints, these elements were not included, but our annotation was reviewed multiple times on different days during a period of 3 weeks, and we hope that we have reached the most objective analysis possible. However, future research should take these into consideration and create a timeline for their annotation. Future direction. I recommend that future research analyze the introductions of applied linguistics research by employing attitude, engagement, and graduation model, all three. Another suggestion would be analysis of the appraisal resources in different moves and steps of introduction section. So we can combine the engagement model or the appraisal framework in analyzing the different steps used in introduction sections, the different moves and steps suggested by Swales. Thank you very much. I hope you have benefited from my presentation today, and if you have any questions, please do ask. This is my email, and these are the references for my article. Thank you very much.